Today we're covering a case that shook the 1990s Seattle music scene, the life and tragic murder of punk rock star Mia Zapata. Mia was a fierce talent, lead vocalist of the Gits, a band ready for stardom in Seattle's grunge and punk rock underground. This episode, we're going to walk through Mia's life, music, and the heartbreaking night of July 7th, 1993. Stay tuned for how this unfortunate crime would stump detectives and encourage Mia's friends to take a stand and not let this case go cold. Welcome!
Welcome!
Housewives of True Crime. It's Monday, and I have a very special guest here today. Her name is Lindsay. She is a disco biscuit, and she lives in Texas. However, she's from the MI Cricket Letter. So welcome.
Thank you.
Tell me about yourself, Lindsay.
Well, yes, my name is Lindsay. My husband and I have been here in Texas since 2008, so a long time, but we both grew up in Mississippi. We have 4 kids, and my oldest was the Jack that y'all heard about a couple of weeks ago. It was starting fires at Tabitha's house, so
yes,
that was fun.
That is true. So we both have kids the same age at the same school, but Lindsay has been a listener for a long time, and she is also a true crime fanatic. So she doesn't just listen to me, she listens to a lot of podcasts. So she always has the good scoop on what cases are ones worth doing for the housewives.
You probably get tired of my cases sometimes.
No, I don't. I think you always pick good ones. The other thing Lindsay and I are known for, besides our true crime talk, is sideline baseball chatter.
Every weekend.
Every single weekend, we sit on the baseball field, and we hope that that live camera stream, if anybody has kids on any kind of teams nowadays, they live stream these so that parents that aren't there, grandparents, or if you just want to go back and see that like home run that your kid hit, you can. But sometimes they keep the volume on. And what I found out this weekend, which you might not know, Lindsay, which will help us in the future, is that our team shuts off the volume. So it's muted.
Do you know, I got a text from one of the moms this weekend that was not there. And she said, just so you know, the sound is on this today.
Because it wasn't our stream. We had plugged into somebody else's stream.
Gotcha.
And so one of the dads warned me about that also. He's like, you can't on everything. Yeah. So no talking smack, especially about the coaches, which a crazy thing this weekend happened. So tell them.
Well, I think it started, apparently there's certain bats that you can't use in baseball, like youth sports, because of player safety. And so I think it started with us telling the other team that they had a bat that wasn't legal or whatever. And I think that kind of got us off on the wrong foot. And then fast forward in the game, and honestly, they're 11-year-old kids. They are not always super accurate with their pitches. And we happened to hit this kid that
this
had really good bat.
Kid. I know. It's just, and honestly, the kid that was pitching, I felt so bad for him because he gets very nervous. Yes. And so when he starts doing bad, you can see the spiral in this guy's eyes. And the fact that he hit the first kid that was up to bat was just
in the head.
Yeah, I know. And then that coach, after the whole inning was over,
the whole inning was done,
he came up to actually one of our coaches, who happened to be the kid's dad at best, and started getting in his face about how this kid that was pitching, our kid, intentionally threw the ball at his face. And it's like, dude, seriously? Like, you could tell that the kid on our team was almost crying when he did it.
He was so upset.
Yeah. And then it escalated, and then the ref had to get involved. And Lindsay and I are sitting over here like, there's the drama.
Coach is like our head coach. I'm like, get over there. You might need to
get this on film.
Yeah, really. But we did end up winning the tournament. And so that was, after that little drama, it was a good game.
It was. And you guys, if you are baseball people, you get this, but these tournaments are really long and you are out there for, more than 16 hours over the weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. I mean, just one of the days can be over 12 hours. And so when you actually come out with the big, huge ring, makes it all worth it.
And fun.
Being a loser does not.
No, that's not fun. And we're lucky that we have such good moms on our team, too.
Yes.
So we're together all weekend long.
I know. It is really nice. And that's how Lindsay and I really became super close. So I'm very happy that she is on my team now on the Housewives, being a housewife friend. And so I hope you come on more and more, Lindsay.
Yeah, I would love to.
Okay, let's get into the case for today. It's a little bit different because I would tend to think this is a case that would mostly be on Patreon, only because it's about a not famous, but could have been famous person back in the 90s. But I thought it was a really good one, so I didn't want to save it just for Patreon. I wanted to bring it to the world. But that does remind me that there is a bonus crime coming up on Patreon soon. And if you do not listen to Patreon yet, Lindsay is a Patreon member. Tell them, do you love it?
Love it.
Yeah.
I feel like the cases are a little more juicy, maybe. And yeah, it's great.
And then every week we talk about juicy stuff that happens. And actually, last week I had my friend Tokes on for Patreon. And if you don't know who she is an actress and she was on that show, Frasier.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Gretchen and I, remember we went out and went to that show and she wanted to be on. So she was on Patreon with me last week. And then she's also going to come up on an episode soon, but it's a real good Patreon. So if you haven't listened, go to patreon.com/Housewives of True Crime and sign up there. Or you can, if you listen on Apple, just click the Clink Clink Club. Or if you listen on Spotify, it's Spotify bonus and you can just click into the Patreon through there. So lots of ways to listen. Okay, let's move on to Mia Zapata. Before I begin, I want to thank Annie Q for bringing this case to us. I want to take a special moment, actually, to talk about Annie. Annie is one of our first Disco Biscuit listeners and a huge supporter. It was also her birthday a couple weeks ago, so I just want to say happy birthday. And I began writing this case right after your birthday, Annie, so happy birthday. Happy birthday. Okay, let's get to it. Mia Zapata. She was born on August 25th, 1965 in Louisville, Kentucky. Liz would be happy that I didn't just say Louisville, by the way.
She would.
And you too, probably, because I think people in the South know how to say Southern terms. Louisville.
This may be the Mississippi way to say it, but I'll say we say Louisville. Louisville, Kentucky.
Louisville.
Yeah. All together.
Mia grew up in a supportive, well-to-do family. Her parents were television executives. Despite comfortable upbringings, Mia wasn't one defined of privilege. She was edgy. Her father gave a good example about how Mia was. He said she was like two different worlds. She lived two different sides of the street. The straight side with parochial schools and affluent family, tennis clubs. But then when she crossed the street, material things didn't really matter to Mia. I would say Mia was a disco biscuit.
For sure.
She attended Catholic school, a Catholic school actually named Presentation Academy in Louisville, and learned guitar and piano by the age of 9. This really drew her to her musical influence and into punk rock bands, which is kind of different than piano. But the guitar portion I could see. She also loved, besides punk rock, blues and jazz. Friends remember that she could channel her punk rock energy right into acoustic guitar, strum blues tunes, which, man, I wish Mia was still around so we could actually hear kind of that mix,
Yes. People that have musical talent like that, just amazing.
It's so amazing. I love it so much.
Because it's not me.
It's not me either. And like, we have a piano at our house and no one plays it, which is like, okay, please, just somebody. I don't even care if you like don't even know what you're doing. They just sit at the piano. Mia was also a gifted poet and an artist. Her friend and drummer of the band, Steve Moriarty, joked that she sort of was good at anything she tried, really, except for spelling. And girl, I'm with you. Like, that autocorrect is my best friend. And I think if anybody, like, I sent my script to anybody, they'd be like, girl, do you even know how to spell? I'm like, not these days.
As long as you can read it.
Yeah. In 1989, Mia was seeking an environment where she could just be herself. So she enrolled in Antioch College in Gillis Springs, Ohio. It's a liberal arts school known for its progressive culture. So it was a perfect fit for Mia. She was like super free spirit, and this is where she found her musical tribe. In 1986, she met 3 friends, Matt Dressner, Steve Moriarty, and Joe Spleen, whose real name actually was Andy Kessler. They formed this punk rock band that would eventually be dubbed the Gits. Fun fact, the Gits originated as a joke from a Monty Python skit, and they were like the sniveling little rat-based Gits, but then that was like too long and really kind of a mouthful, and so it was shortened to the Gits.
I feel like our husbands would be all over that reference. Not so much us.
100%. Yeah, I was like, I don't know, Monty Python. But my husband would probably tell you every line of the whole movie.
Mike probably too.
Bandmate Mike Dressner once recalled the first time he heard Mia sing at open mic night, and he said he was stunned, actually brought to tears, because her voice and her presence was so soulful and raspy. She had one of those like Bonnie Raitt. Is it Bonnie Raitt? Bonnie Raitt.
Any rate.
Yeah, Bonnie Raitt type voices with honest lyrics, and she just had a way of commanding attention. Another one of her friends said, commanding respect and interest immediately when she met people. Offstage, Mia was somewhat shy. She was shy about fame. All she really wanted was like a simple cabin in the woods, an old Jeep, and a sheepdog. But this onstage presence, she really was a star, which we see a lot of times with actors, right? Like once they step on the stage, they become someone else. At this time, although Mia was in Ohio, Seattle's early 90s punk rock scene was on the rise. By 1989, the Gits had honed their sound and were eager to plug into this larger scene, so they decided to move coast, packed up from Ohio, headed to Seattle, Washington, where Seattle was becoming the hottest music spot. This was the era of grunge. Bands like Nirvana, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, they were exploding out of Seattle. Now, Linz, you're a little bit young, but do you remember this? Like, you were probably little.
Let's see. What year was this? 90?
This is like early 90s, like maybe 1990, 93.
Yeah. I mean, I remember those bands for sure. When they came out, I would have been like 5. So, yeah. I do remember, hearing their music and all that.
So it was like, for me, in the early 90s was middle school. And I think that's when you start like music,
I would agree.
And so I was really into Nirvana. That was like my jam. I loved it. I had the CD, and then I even saw Pearl Jam in high school. I mean, it was something.
You're the Jinkos and all that, or were you more music than the dress?
So I dressed in like flannels and really baggy, like I would buy Levi's that were men's Levi's. So I did that kind of look, but I also really wanted to look cute. So I would pair it with, a crop top, and I wouldn't wear Doc Martens. I would wear like wedges.
Gotcha.
So I had some, I don't know, that sounds really funky.
A little of everything.
Yeah, I was like, I can't be too grunge.
Yeah.
Because I still have to be real cute.
Still have to be cute.
But I also, by the way, I went to a ton of punk concerts. Like I was really to punk music and guys that liked punk music, which is funny because Sean, my husband, is
None of the
none of those things. And he never was. Like he did not even listen to punk at all. He was more into like the hip hop rap scene. So we really came from two different worlds in the 90s. Let's get to the underground punk scene in Seattle. It was really a thing. And the Gits, well, they landed right in Seattle and moved right in. They actually did move right in. They moved into an abandoned house together. This whole house they called the Rat House. They worked day jobs. Mia bartended. Actually, Steve Moriarty in his book said they kind of just tried to get any kind of odds and ends jobs that would allow them to, skip town for a couple weeks to do some shows and then come back and work. So he said it wasn't that easy to pay rent, but, they made it work. Before long, the Gits built a real loyal following in the city's club, becoming favorites in the Seattle punk circle. They played shows with their friends and other local feminist punk bands, one named 7 Year Bitch, which sounds like a punk band to me.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah. Exactly what you want your kids to be listening to right now. Kyle's like, hey, can you take me to this show? It's called 7 Year Bitch. Yes, sure, honey. Let's go.
Maybe not.
Even though Seattle's music fame was mostly about grunge and time, the Gits carved out their own punk rock identity. Dresner from the Gits said, those days the mission was pretty simple. Play passionate, kick-ass music, and they did. Over time, we realized that our music wasn't easily categorized with other genres, but it didn't really affect us because we were pretty clear on our mission. Then in 1992, the Gits released their first album called Frenching the Bully. Don't know what that means.
I'll say that's another interesting.
Sounds like you're French kissing the bully, which maybe that's what they mean when they say, like, keep your friends close but your enemies closer.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's one way to do it.
It's in me.
There was another song called Another Shot of Whiskey and another one called Second Skin. The band's reputation was growing beyond the underground, and by mid-1990, they were drawing interest from major music labels. In late June 1993, the Gits were off to Los Angeles to showcase for Atlantic Records, and they were offered a deal. They were to release their next album with Atlantic. Now, I remember this era, and I remember my friends that were all in punk bands at the time. They would call this a sellout. If anybody had friends that were in this kind of situation, and I would not ever call it a sellout. I'd be like, dude, you're gonna make freaking money and do what you love and not have to like bartend on the side and stay up all night and all this. That sounds like a win-win to me. So they were in on it. They were like, yeah, let's be sellouts. And I'm just kidding. I'm totally making that up. I don't know what they were saying, but
really saying we're not gonna have to bartend anymore.
Yeah. They're like, we can actually pay our rent. Sign me up.
That's weird.
Yeah. Okay. So this was a huge opportunity and they actually were ecstatic. And Mia was on cloud nine. After years of grinding in the underground, they were on the verge of a breakthrough and it felt really like a dream come true. They headed back to Seattle, and in early July 1993, they were gearing up for this national tour. They were finishing work on their second album. They were planning to call Enter the Conquering Chicken.
Another interesting name.
Everything was falling into place, okay? Promise you, even with that name. Everyone could tell that this was it, and Mia was the happiest she'd ever been. I will also say during this time, Mia had, based on Steve Moriarty's book, who was in the band, they did kind of have a come to Jesus with Mia. And I didn't put this in there a lot, but she did have a drinking problem. And they were like, hey, if we're going to make it and we're going to make it big, you've got to hone it in. And she did. Like he said, she took that and she was like, you're right. Like, let's just stop doing that and really focus on what we're doing. And at this time, she did stop drinking.
Good for her, because that can be really hard.
Totally. And that's probably what also brought her this happiness, like alcohol is depressive form of chemical. And so it probably helped her. She was doing what she loved. She was making music and she was about to take it to the next level. But just 10 days after this Atlantic record offer, something was coming, something horrible. The fateful night of July 7th, 1993. Now, let me set the scene a little bit for you. On July 6th, 1993, it's a Tuesday in Seattle. They are at the Capitol Hill neighborhood, and Mia had been hanging out with some friends that evening, just decompressing from being on the road. The crew gathered at a local spot that they always went to. It's called the Comet Tavern. It's like a giddy dive bar, punk bar on Pike Street. That night, they were in a somber mood because they were commemorating one of their friends, Stephanie Sargent. She had passed away a year ago on that day. That was like the 1-year anniversary. She was one of their besties from that band, 7 Year Bitch. So Mia and some of the 7 Year Bitch members were all just kind of like raising a toast, celebrating the life of their friend and just kind of remembering her. The Comet also was very familiar place for all of them. It was a spot that they knew all the staff members, and Mia just felt like she could be herself. As the night wore on, past midnight, the crowd thins, and sometime around 1 to 2 o'clock in the morning, Mia decided to call it a night. She said her goodbyes, told her friends she planned to catch a cab. Remember, there's no Ubers in these days. And that was totally normal for her. The other thing you have to remember is there's really no cell phones. I'm sure if she did have a cell phone, it wasn't, I bet you she didn't even have a cell phone.
Did your family ever have a bag phone? Did y'all have these?
My uncle had one, but I didn't it was like, whoa, my uncle has one of those I don't even know if it was called a cell phone at that time. It was like a car. I think we called it a car phone.
Yeah. My dad had one. And, you had to pay for each minute or something. And so if we called him at work, he wanted us to always hang up before the voicemail picked up. So he didn't have to pay for the minute.
I know. I wonder how much a minute was.
It was probably a lot. I don't know. I don't remember.
I remember when I had my first cell phone, you would still had to pay for the minute also. And then it was after a certain hour, you could talk. You had unlimited calling after a certain time. And then I would try to save all my minutes for that. But I got myself in some big trouble with AT&T. My bills were real big and I had to call and beg them to give me some grace because I did not have the money to pay them.
And you had limited text messages and all of that?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I got my first phone in 1998. I still have the same number.
Oh, wow.
Then, yeah.
I guess I got my first one in 9th grade. So that's about the same time, 19 at me. My mom and I supposedly shared it, but she never really got to use it.
Isn't that how we still do it with our kids? The first one, we're it's actually my phone. And then you're like, okay, I'd never seen that phone.
Never.
All right. So Mia it was normal for Mia to take a cab. She actually knew she didn't drive and she knew a lot of cabs by their first name. They knew who she was. So her friends having her say hey, I'm going to go take a cab. That was just a normal thing. Now here's where things get a little fuzzy. Capitol Hill, where the bar was a real lively area. And Mia lived in a different neighborhood, the Central District. It was a couple miles away. Before she found a cab, she made a quick stop. She walked 1 block up Pike Street to a building where it housed her practice studio. In that same building, one of her friends lived in an apartment upstairs. So she popped in and visited that friend real briefly. She stayed for a short while and then she left her friend's apartment around 2 a.m. This is on July 7th, 1993. She mentioned again to her friend that she was going to go get a cab from there. But there is no record of Mia ever getting into a cab. None of these cab drivers in the area reported picking up even Mia or somebody that even looked like Mia. So what we're thinking is that maybe she ended up walking a little bit until she found a cab, or someone offered her a ride, or somewhere along the way she got intercepted. And these are the questions that would haunt this case for years and years. It's possible that Mia walked outside and couldn't find a cab. And given how late it was, because, at 2 a.m., maybe there's just not a lot of action on a Tuesday night. So she probably decided to walk part of the way. We know that a friend had offered her a couch to crash on just a few blocks away on 11th Avenue, but it's unclear if Mia headed that direction or not. What we do know is that around 2:15 or between 2:15 and 2:30, a man near 11th and Pike Place reported hearing a horrifying scream that night. It was so chilling that he actually ran outside to see what was happening, but he didn't see anything in the darkness. That scream very well could have been Mia in distress, but we will never know for sure. But it is like a haunting detail. Sometime in that narrow window after leaving her friend's apartment, Mia Zapata encountered her killer. No one witnessed this attack itself. In fact, for about an hour and a half, no one knew what actually happened to Mia. Then at approximately between 3:20 and 3:30 a.m., a person discovered a body on a deserted stretch of a road in Seattle's Central District. Remember, I told you that's where she lived, in the Central District.
So how far do you know between where she left the friend's house and the Central District?
Yes. So it was 2 miles from where Mia had last been seen.
Okay. So not super far, but kind of far if you're walking.
If you're walking, you're going probably, it's like 30 minutes.
30 minutes, yeah.
Yeah. The body was lying near intersection of 24th Avenue South and South Washington Street. It's not a populated area. It's pretty much a quiet residential zone. The victim was a young woman with dark hair, dressed in a t-shirt, shorts, and boots, and no ID on her. Police were called, and they noted the young woman's body was positioned real oddly. Her arms were stretched out to her side, and her legs were crossed at the ankles, almost posed at what would be described as a crucifix-like position. And it was Mia. But at this moment, authorities didn't realize, that they had Mia. She was just known at that time as Jane Doe. Seattle police immediately launched an investigation, and as dawn broke on July 7th, the brutality of this crime became very clear when the medical examiner conducted Mia's autopsy. She was badly beaten, sexually assaulted, and later reports revealed that she had internal injuries, including a lacerated liver from blunt force trauma, meaning her attacker had actually punched or kicked her with such force that it ruptured her insides.
Gosh, that was terrible.
It's terrible. She had also been strangled with the drawstring of her own sweatshirt, and it was like a Gits sweatshirt.
Terrible.
The image is really it's pretty heart-wrenching because, man, I could just imagine that she was had her headphones on and had no idea what was coming. And I think that's really what happened. The medical examiner also noted that if Mia hadn't been strangled, just the injuries of that blunt force to her internal organs probably would have been fatal. What also is a weird twist of fate is that the King County medical examiner who handled her body recognized her from the Gits. He happened to be a fan of this local music, and right away he noticed that it was Mia Zapata.
How heartbreaking would that be to see like
Oh my gosh.
your this band that you've been following and then see the singer?
I think it happens also with like firefighters sometimes in like small towns, you know.
I didn't even think about that, but yes.
So the news traveled fast, like lightning through the Seattle music scene, and the shock was to her friends that just saw her hours earlier. I mean, they just could not imagine. They hated hearing that this murder happened just minutes from their house on her way home. Police informed those close to Mia, and the grief swept through this friend circle and all the fellow musicians. Many of them rushed to the medical examiner's office and the police station seeking confirmation and praying that it wasn't true, but it was true. It was Mia, and she was gone at just 27 years old. Now, this is one of those weird things because do you know this like dreaded 27 club?
No.
So the dreaded 27 club is this, it is a dreaded 27. Like all these people from musicians have died at 27. Kurt Cobain died at 27. And so they call it the dreaded 27.
Never heard of that. And it's so young.
It's so young. I think about it. I'm like, wow, 27. You haven't even begun your life yet. Like I wasn't even married yet at 27. Like I can't, in my life after I'm married and have kids feels like actually my life, you know?
Right. We got married really early. We were 23, but yeah, 27 still just feels like a baby.
I know. Although, like, you're just barely past 27, Linz.
That's not true.
I'm just kidding. The immediate aftermath was devastating, and Mia's bandmates, who had been like family, were absolutely crushed. They just could not fathom how their fiery, beloved friend was taken so brutally. Matt Dresner from the band, he was the bassist, later said that they really struggled with this loss after. It just left this cavernous hole in the music scene. Vigils were organized spontaneously, and within days, people showed up carrying yellow roses, which had been chosen as a symbol for her. Mia's father said on the way to this service, he recalled being struck with just a sight of so many strangers holding yellow roses for his daughter. It was like so overwhelming. It showed really how Mia connected a whole community together. And, you know, her parents probably had not even like the slightest idea that she had so much impact in that Seattle culture.
That's what I was just thinking, like how sad that they didn't even know until she died, you know?
I know. Seattle police, meanwhile, had a major homicide investigation on their hands. From the get-go, it was a tough case. There was no eyewitnesses, no one saw the attack, no immediate suspects, and the crime scene was real clear. Like, there was just nothing but a body. Detective Tom Pike at the Seattle Homicide Unit noted the challenge. He said, "We're faced with a situation where we don't know where the actual crime scene was. We only know where we found Mia, which we don't believe is in the same place that she was killed." The detectives code for we're starting at square -10. That's what they said.
That doesn't sound promising.
It doesn't sound promising. You know, it looks like Mia was killed somewhere else, perhaps in a vehicle or another location, and then the body was dumped at a residential street. Apart from her sweatshirt cord and other injuries from the body, there was just not a lot for the detectives to go on initially. They scoured the area. They found little forensic evidence. They had no blood, no belongings to a killer. It seemed that this perpetrator just virtually left with no trace. However, unknown to everyone at the time, the medical examiner did collect one crucial piece of evidence during Mia's autopsy. There was saliva believed to be the killer's on a bite mark from Mia's body. Now, in 1993, DNA technology was still at their very early stages, but foresight to save the saliva sample would prove vital years later, which is so amazing. I freaking love DNA cases so much.
And I'm always like, way to go, saving that. Because they didn't know what was coming. I mean, I guess they had an idea, but, they didn't know that they'd be able to test that and, like, find somebody one day.
No, and don't you think you would think it like, oh, this is so nothing? Like,
Right.
he probably even saved it thinking this is never going to come to something, but I'll just like stick it in the freezer and
Right.
babies someday.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what he did. He stuck it in the freezer and thought maybe at some point someone would find her killer. In a few days after the murder, the police pursued every lead they could. They questioned Mia's friends. They mapped out her movements. They thought maybe it was a jealous ex. She did have an ex-boyfriend, but really everyone kind of checked out and there was nothing. They really did hit a dead end. Another theory was that maybe someone at the Comet Tavern followed her out, but they interviewed everybody that had been there that night, or at least everybody that they thought had been there that night. They talked to the staff and nothing. Then back on the music scene, friends started holding benefit concerts, selling merch, hosting fundraisers, all to raise money to hire a private investigator. Not just any private investigator. They hired a total badass, a lady PI, which, I mean, listen.
Always the best.
Always the best. Leah Heron. And her friends and bandmates and local businesses donated $70,000 to this investigation, which is incredible because we didn't have like the internet and a GoFundMe page at the moment. So they just, collected cash and they paid for this private investigator. Big names stepped into this, giving this money, like Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden, and even Joan Jett helped raise money for Mia, which is awesome. Joan Jett also was so moved that she played a benefit show for Mia Zapata. And she even said in an interview, she said, whatever y'all need, I'm in. So this private investigator went to work and she dove into the case with a lot of devotion. And for 2 to 3 years, she worked with the police in pursuing tips that came in and making her own theory. One eerie tip she did investigate was an incident that happened not too long after Mia's murder. A woman reported escaping from 2 men who tried to force her into a car in that same area. But that lead never conclusively tied Mia back to the case. Leah at one point theorized that the way that Mia's body had been positioned, like with her arms stretched out, could indicate that it was 2 people carrying her.
The crossing was kind of weird though, right?
Yeah, I didn't think so. And I don't know why her body was positioned that way. I do think that the person had to have positioned her that way.
Well,
because if you're just throwing her out of a car, she's going to kind of roll and not, land with her ankles crossed and her arms stretched out. So I do think that's weird and I don't like any piece of that. And we're going to get to this guy who is, because they do find him eventually. And I think he's disgusting. So I don't know why he did it.
to do something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So beyond the investigation, Mia's friends actually poured their grief into something proactive. In months after this murder, Valerie Agnew, a 7-year bitch member, and other members of this community founded a nonprofit called Home Alive. Home Alive's mission was to provide affordable self-defense training and safety education, especially geared towards women and folks in the music industry and art scene, which, by the way, I mean, that's amazing. I actually, because our friend Liz's daughter is homesick today, and she asked me right before this case what I was doing, and I kind of told her a little bit about it because I'm like, girlfriend went walking outside at night by herself. And so it is a good lesson, right? Like, you just never know, and you just have to be very vigilant and not walk alone. And so I love that they started this Home Alive.
Yes.
And okay, so Home Alive also, just real quick, they started giving self-defense courses to women for very, very, very cheap. And they said, it's possible that if Mia had some self-defense classes or had some skills that she could have possibly, come out alive. They also organized workshops on how to use pepper spray and even like boxing lessons. They just wanted to make these classes either free or very cheap for struggling musicians, students, and locals.
Is he still around today? Do you know?
Yes, it's still around today.
So that's great.
Lindsay, which is amazing, right? It really is amazing.
I love that.
Then for Home Alive, all these major artists, including Nirvana's Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Heart, and Joan Jett, put an album together and raised funds to spread awareness, which is incredible. Meanwhile, the Gits band members tried to cope with the loss of their singer and friend, and they initially couldn't even imagine continuing without Nia. Like, how could they? But eventually, they did decide to record and perform a few tribute projects, both in her honor and to raise money for this investigation. In 1995, Joan Jett actually teamed up with the surviving Gits members to record an album under the name Evil Stig, which is Gits Live Backwards.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, neat for them to be able to do an album like that.
Yeah, totally. I love it because, Joan Jett has that raspy voice too. So it just is like so awesome.
Yeah.
So there was outpouring support, and you would think that with all the support, maybe somebody would know something and talk, but unfortunately, the case was stagnant. By 1995, the private investigator money ran out, and in 1996, there was nothing. Even Leah, like, she kept pressing on with the case. She didn't even ask for any money. She just had like it in her heart to do so, but the case kind of went cold. Now, in the early 2000s, Seattle had a newly formed cold case squad, and they periodically tested DNA evidence from unsolved cases. DNA technology improved by that year, and Mia's case was a major turning point for this development of the STR DNA profiling, which allows forensic scientists to get a full DNA profile with like a tinier biological sample than before. It's kind of, think of it like DNA testing on steroids. So now you only needed like a few cells worth of DNA to potentially identify somebody. The Washington State Crime Lab got better equipment, and the National DNA Database was growing with offenders. So that little sample of saliva from that bite mark was tested, and DNA mic drop. Breakthrough DNA evidence. In the early 2000s, the Seattle's brand new cold case unit tested that DNA, and Detective Greg Mixell and Richard Gagnon, they had actually been obsessed with Mia's case for a long time. So they submitted that sample, and they submitted it again and again, because you remember, like, at this point, the database of people, like, now they could see like that they had a DNA like chain, so they could match it to somebody. But then we also have to get some guy that has also given his DNA into some criminal record to match the profiles at that point, right? So it's a little bit tricky. Now we even have some like ancestry DNA that we look at, but at that point, I think it was just like criminals that had their DNA uploaded into this system.
CODIS was really around by this time, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think it was just coming up right now. So in 2002, nearly a decade after her death, the lab called, and they had a match. The DNA match was a man living all the way on the opposite corner of the country. His name was Jesus Mezquia. Now, do you know what Jesus also looks like?
I do know. Jesus.
Yeah. Isn't that like
suddenly blood? Yes.
Yeah. He was a 48-year-old Cuban American man residing in Florida. When that call came in, I mean, it was a bombshell. Detectives had like had to double, triple check it to believe it. It was conclusive that this was the man that was that killed Mia Zapata. So who was this guy? Jesus Mezquia. He wasn't known as like a creeper to the music scene. He had really kind of flown under the radar to music people. I don't even think he had like that in his DNA. No pun intended. But he wasn't shy to the police. He was a douche canoe and he had a long criminal history, including burglary, assault, domestic violence, indecent exposure. In fact, just 2 weeks before Mia's murder, he had been cited for exposing himself in Seattle.
So was he living in Seattle?
Yeah, he was.
Okay. And he had since moved to Florida?
Yes. He had come to the U.S. from Cuba during the, a boat lift in 1980. And then in the early 90s, he was kind of drifting around the United States. He had a criminal one and not a small one. In fact, his DNA was in the system because he had been arrested in Florida in 2002 for a burglary and domestic violence incident. And that required him to give his DNA sample. And that's how they finally got him. They pieced together that Mezquia actually lived in Seattle in the early 90s, just 3 blocks from where Mia's body was found. Detectives believe that Mia was wearing headphones and she was walking determined, pretty fast, probably towards her home, didn't notice Mezquia approaching until it was too late. And then he either offered her a ride or simply just jumped out and forced her to get into his vehicle. From there, he drove a short distance, attacked her in the backseat of his car, then had some abuse such as this, bite mark, thankfully but unthankfully, but that's the only way we would have gotten to know who he was.
Yeah, we would have found him otherwise.
He then dumped her body in Central District in his own neighborhood, probably on his way home, and then slipped through the night undetected. In early January 2003, the focus was on catching this guy. And so Seattle authorities coordinated with police in Florida. And on January 10th, 2003, they arrested him in the Florida Keys where he was living, which sounds like a real nice life.
It does. But as if he's older than Seattle.
Yeah, really. News of his arrest broke in Seattle soon after, sending waves of emotion through Mia's circle. And after 10 years, they finally had a face to this evil who had taken their friend. The trial of Jesus Mezquia took place in early 2004 after 11 years. Mezquia was now in his late 40s, and he was accused of first-degree murder with sexual assault. Prosecutors laid out the DNA and the history of his violence, especially against women. And of course, he said he was innocent. They said that, excuse me, sir, but we actually have your DNA. And he could not offer any explanation as to how his DNA got on a bite mark from the victim from that night. And so on March 25th, 2004, the jury delivered their verdict of guilty with the first-degree murder conviction. Now it was time for sentencing Mezquia, and the judge initially sentenced him to 36 years in prison, which was above the standard range for this crime. Now, listen, I think we just did another case in Seattle, or not in Seattle, but in Washington. It's just not enough. I don't think 36 years is enough.
Yeah.
But last one was 27. Yes.
No. So if he's 40, he'd be old, but not
too old to do it again.
Right.
In my opinion.
Right. Was he ever convicted of another murder, or was this the only one? No.
This is the only one, which is...
Makes you wonder.
It does make you wonder, because it's usually these guys don't just do it one time and go out of their system. But he does. So I don't know. You would think that other DNA evidence would tie him to it, but maybe they just haven't put it through the system. You know, you have to have investigators that will pull out old DNA and start throwing it through the system to see.
Right.
He tried to appeal, of course, because he said that his sentence was like over the limit of what it should have been. He said the judge overstepped by exceeding the sentencing guidelines. And he, at this point, waived his right to a jury for this resentencing, and they gave him the same judge that gave him the same sentence.
It's like, this is a waste of time.
It's such a waste of time and money. And so, you know, I don't think that it's enough. But it actually was enough because it turned out to be a life sentence for this man. He died in prison in 2021 at the age of 66.
I'm glad he didn't get out, but you think about younger people, you know, if he was younger when he was caught or whatever, he might have gotten out.
Yeah, it's true. He never confessed to this crime, and he never expressed any kind of remorse that we know of. And it's been over 30 years since Mia Zapata was taken from her circle of disco biscuits. And I would like them to come out with a song named Disco Biscuit, just saying, in her honor.
Yeah, the Gits are still out there.
They are.
Okay.
Yes. There's a 2005 documentary called The Gits, if you guys want to watch it. And really, she is like the ultimate disco biscuit. She was a fighter, a poet, and a real powerhouse. So that is the story of Mia Zapata. But seriously, you guys, like, I think there is something to be said, especially if you want to talk to your kids, just and us, you know, like, I feel like sometimes we as older, not old, but, you know, older, like, we think that we can walk alone sometimes. And a lot of times I do it just from restaurants, like, oh, I'm parked in the parking garage, it's no big deal. But we should band together and be like, oh no, we're going to walk together and then I'll drive you to your car or something like that. We can all just learn to stick together and not be alone walking. And it's also very sad that we have to still think like that, but we have to.
It is fun.
Yeah.
No, I run a lot.
Yes, you do run a lot.
And I get nervous. I mean, I try not to ever run in the dark just because it makes me so nervous.
You should carry that spray. I will get it for you. It's called carryimpact.com is their website, but or Carry Impact Spray. I'll link it here. But they are coming out, or if they've already come out with the keychain version. But I give even the like little bigger version to my daughter to take with her when she's going like somewhere where not necessarily she's going to be by herself, but there's a possibility that one parent's going to pick up before I come or something like that. I'm like, just have it with you because if you need it, you need it. And it's better than pepper spray. Pepper spray will affect you and the perpetrator. This will only affect the perpetrator.
I remember Gretchen not too long ago saying she had bear mace. And I also have some bear mace. And I'm like, it's so old. I don't know if it even work anymore.
Yeah, no, I'm going to get you Carry Impact because you do run and, you know, you just never know.
You really don't. It's sad, but it's true.
Well, thank you for being on the podcast today. I know that was a downer of a case, but I do think there's some lessons, and then there's a great organization now, Home Alive. And if you want more of me, see me on Thursdays on patreon.com. And also, I have another podcast that is every single day called The Alternate. It's going over the Karen retrial, and it is on Spotify and Apple, and it's also on YouTube. On YouTube, it's just Alternate Pod, and everywhere else, it's The Alternate Podcast. But it's really like Karen retrial is getting real good right now, so it's a great time to listen. And these episodes are really short. They're recaps of like everything that you actually need to know for that day, so you don't have to sit and watch 8 hours of jury trial. I'll do that for you. And so follow me there. And don't forget to rate and review us on all the podcast areas that you listen and all the podcasts that you listen to me on. And I think that's it for the day. So clink, clink.
Clink, clink.